Hi, everyone. I'm Sean from Sean's Tech Blog, featuring guest speakers in career coaching, technology, cybersecurity, gaming, and consumer financial literacy, supporting job seekers and consumers in professional and personal growth. I'm here with Larry Vishal. Did I say that correctly?
Close enough.
Uh,
Larry Viezel. That's fine.
Viezel, he has over 20 years experience. He's a seasoned technology expert, and I'm going to let him introduce himself and uh, tell us a little bit more about himself.
All right. My name is Larry Viezel. I have been in working in technology since I graduated college, which was a long time ago in 1996. My first job out of college was as a COBOL developer at Con Edison, which is a power utility in New York City. And the job involved it was a Y2K job, and it involved bringing um, any of our old COBOL applications over to an intranet based technology. So it was kind of really old technology, and also at the same time really new technology, because that was right around when JavaScript started becoming a thing. So I kind of stumbled upon building these a JavaScript application, an Ajax based application, before it was actually really a thing. We built about a dozen applications at the company, and mine was the only one that kind of survived for a long time. Even though it took a long time to actually build it, they were actually said that everything else that was kind of built at that company using this program, or that at the time, kind of fell by the wayside, except for this one accounting application that I built to kind of fit their accounting trouble, their office invoicing system. So then I moved from there over to a company called 6 Degrees. 6 Degrees was a prototype for social media. It kind of, I think the patent is now might be owned by Facebook or licensed to Facebook. But the idea was behind, the old Kevin Bacon game of 6 degrees of separation. The idea was, how do we connect everybody on the internet? How do we get, I know this person, that person knows that person, and how do you find out your connection through a connection engine? Of course, they don't really do that, quite that way anymore. I guess LinkedIn still does it, where you can find out who is in your third degree. But that was the application that I worked on back then. It was a proto social media before even MySpace and Friendster was 6 Degrees. And I moved from there after 6 Degrees. The day that they were announcing layoffs was the day I was putting in my resignation at 6 Degrees. So I very sneakily hid my resignation letter in my jacket pocket and didn't actually submit it to HR. And I got my severance package, left the company, and took a few weeks off to go on a road trip with my friend Dave, and then came back to New York in January 2001, and started at a company at the time was called TMP Worldwide. And they were the owners of Monster.com. And it was an HR tech company. It was an advertising company. TMP stands for Telephone Marketing Program. So for those of you who may remember the Yellow Pages, they used to, in the 60s, put ads in the Yellow Pages. That's how they would do a lot of hiring for like permanent positions, for evergreen positions. So like if you were looking to hire people to work at a plumbing company and you always needed plumbers, it would be a good place to put your advertisement in the Yellow Pages, so people who were looking for plumbers could also possibly want to work at a plumbing company. So that's where they would have the ads. But of course, in the 90s, along comes the internet, and that exploded and turned into the biggest thing in our world right now, I guess. And my initial responsibility was building career sites. So a lot of it was custom implementations. And that's where I started at the company, was as a technical lead, building career sites for some Fortune 500 companies. Some of the earlier ones that I had under my belt, GE at the time was one of them. Deloitte was another one. They were one of my biggest clients that I worked on for a long time with Deloitte and custom engineering. We built an application. We built a site that supported, I want to say 17 languages and over 80 countries. It was huge. It was a really big application built in .NET. and I worked on the custom engineering team and on Deloitte for years. And then I got moved from there, still kind of doing custom engineering, but I kind of worked up the ranks from to being a technical lead, to then working on the labs and innovation team over at TMP, and then moving from there to we had started to productize some of our applications like career sites, and we had built a application. At the time it was called SEO sites, which was SEO. So the idea was to make stuff kind of automatically have search engine quality in the job sites. So we had built this application. There was a consulting company that came in and built it, and they did a good job getting a prototype up there. We did a good job of selling that prototype very quickly. Unfortunately, the prototype wasn't really built for scalability. So my first kind of real job in that role on the product side of the fence was kind of implementing scalability into this application. So there was a lot of rebuilding all the SQL queries and figuring out how to scale the web servers and figuring out how to make sure that the servers weren't, lighting on fire every time someone tried to search for a job. And there was some amount of crashing, but we eventually got it fairly stable using, lots of layers of caching, CDN technology, and I think we settled on Akamai after a time, but we were using another company for a while, and I kind of brought that to the fold. Was initially bringing on CDN technology. So I did that for a while, and then I moved from there onto I think there was an interim position where I worked on the job importer feed, and then I worked for a good bit on the platform. That's where I kind of became the VP of platform technology, which was a good long role. What we had done was we had consolidated a lot of the application. We realized that a lot of different parts of the company and a lot of our different applications were kind of all over the place. So we consolidated everything onto one database, which was fine at the time. But then we said, what would make more sense is if each, not necessarily application, but each domain would have its own separate database and their own separate API over that domain, so that the business layer would be able to call those individual microservices and output the data as needed for that application. So we kind of had to separate everything out, and my job as the owner of the platform was to both support the legacy code that was still leveraging the old way things were structured, and at the same time also kind of build out just the identity administration and the identity piece of it. And that's kind of where I focused on a lot of identity technology. I became an expert in SSO and in SAML and JWT and OIDC and all that sort of technology related to identity. And then I worked on that for a good long time as a VP of platform engineering. And then I moved on to sales engineering, because what they had found was I actually had a very good knack for explaining technical concepts to non-technical people. And that's, I think, where I settled at the end of my role there, or at the end of my job there, because I worked on that until 2025 and was recently laid off. Unfortunately, the company has been downsizing considerably, and that was where my role ended, was in June or July of 2025. I got laid off, and I have been searching for a new position ever since. That's where I am.
All right.
I met Sean here in California while I was out in Temecula going to a Staples. And we found out that we both were interested in cybersecurity and technology, and here I am.
And I was your Uber driver twice.
Yes. Yeah, twice. Yeah. And it was actually pretty entertaining that I got dropped off at the Staples and they got picked up. Same guy, and we had a great conversation, and we friended each other on LinkedIn and connected there, and here we are on this broadcast.
All right. And I just want to talk about that's some networking right there, genuine. I think, I asked you and then we started talking and but often in LinkedIn, before we go into the topics we're going to talk about, right, what I'm going to touch on with you is what we're going to talk about engineering and tech leadership, technology and product, career leadership development, and we're going to transition to that. But often in networking, it's hard to know cold outreach via LinkedIn versus talking to someone directly in a space. So we're going to transition to that. We're going to stop the recording here. Join us in the link in the next video. The links will be below. And let me stop that recording here.